Introduction. Rudius understands that this is not an ordinary battle. If the enemy breaks through here, Ruijerd, the super survivors, and everyone connected to Orsted's plan could be crushed. The enemy force includes names that sound almost impossible to fight. The North god Alexander Kalman Roman III, the former sword god Galfarian, and an ogre god Malta. The main question is simple but terrifying. Can Rudius's alliance survive when several world-class fighters appear at the same time? This volume is mostly battle, but it is also about reputation, pride, heroism, and what it means to protect people when every plan begins to fall apart. Event 1. Communications are cut. The sudden silence is frightening because their whole strategy depends on fast communication. Rudius immediately understands that the enemy may have found a way to isolate the supered village. Scouts and allies begin reporting movement from the kingdom of Byaral. A strike force is advancing toward the village, exactly as Geese wanted. Around the planning table, the mood changes from preparation to emergency. Rudius must protect civilians, while also preparing to face legendary warriors. The first stage of the battle is not sword against sword. It is the enemy cutting off options and forcing Rudius to fight on unfavorable ground. Event 2. The village prepares for war. The supered survivors are not just background characters anymore. They are the people at the heart of the conflict, and their future depends on this defense. Rudius knows the enemy wants to force him into panic. Instead, he divides responsibilities and tries to use every ally's strength as carefully as possible. Eris prepares for close combat. Roxy and Sylphie support with magic. Ruijerd stands as the symbol of dead end, and Rudius takes the role of battlefield commander. Even before the first clash, the emotional stakes are clear. This is not only a fight for survival, it is a fight to protect the name and future of the supered tribe. Event 3. Enemy commanders arrive. Alexander Kalman Roman III steps forward as the North god, confident, proud, and eager to prove himself. His presence immediately raises the danger level. Galfarian, the former sword god, appears with a colder and heavier aura. For Eris, this is the kind of opponent who represents the peak of swordsmanship. The ogre god Malta also enters the battlefield as a massive force of raw power. Rudius's side is not facing a normal army, they are facing living disasters. The confrontation makes one thing obvious. If Rudius misjudges even one opponent, the battle could collapse instantly. Event 4. The battle begins. Rudius uses powerful magic to disrupt enemy formations, but the enemy champions keep pushing forward. Ordinary tactics are not enough against opponents of this level. The battlefield becomes chaotic as different fights split apart. Each ally has to survive their own opponent while still protecting the wider line. Ruijerd fights with the calm of a veteran, Eris burns with intensity, and Rudius tries to watch everything at once while knowing that he cannot control every corner of the fight. By the end of this opening clash, the fight has already become bigger than expected. The village defense has turned into a battle between legends. Event 5. Rudius falls into disaster. The fall is brutal, and Rudius is badly hurt. For a moment, the great commander of the battle becomes just one injured man trying not to die underground. Doga is also caught in the situation, and the two have to survive without the full support of the others. Their isolation makes the situation feel desperate. Rudius realizes that if he cannot return, the battle above may continue without one of its most important pieces. Every minute underground matters. This section changes the rhythm of the volume. While armies clash above, Rudius must first win a smaller battle against injury, fear, and the ravine itself. Event 6. Rudius turns the ravine into a chance. His damaged arm and strange demonic power become part of the solution. Instead of giving up, he adapts his body and magic to keep fighting. Doga helps carry the burden, giving Rudius enough space to prepare. Their teamwork is rough but effective because both understand that survival comes first. Rudius slowly rebuilds his confidence. The enemy may have knocked him down, but they have not removed him from the battle. By the end of this sequence, Rudius is ready to return. The comeback begins not with a grand speech, but with stubborn problem-solving in the dark. Event 7. Eris faces Galfarian. Gal represents the old peak of the sword god style. Eris represents brutal growth, instinct, and the will to protect the people she loves. Their swords clash with overwhelming force. Eris is not fighting for rank or pride. She is fighting because losing would mean letting the enemy through. The duel pushes Eris to her limit. Every strike carries the weight of her training, her years away from Rudius, and the strength she promised to gain. When Eris holds her ground against Gal, it proves how far she has come. She is no longer only Rudius's protector. She is a warrior capable of standing among monsters. Event 8. Kalman Lineage Battle. Alexander Kalman Roman III wants to prove himself as a hero, but his idea of heroism is twisted by arrogance and the desire to shine on the biggest stage possible. Kalman Roman II and the allied fighters try to contain him, but Alexander's mobility and confidence make him extremely difficult to pin down. The battle becomes less about simple strength and more about experience. Older warriors understand things Alexander still has not learned. Even so, Alexander remains terrifying. He is not just a reckless youth. He is a genius-level fighter with enough power to make recklessness deadly. Event 9. Dead End joins the fight. Ruijerd's calm discipline contrasts with Alexander's flashy confidence. One fights like a veteran who has survived centuries of war. The other fights like someone desperate to become a legend. The combined pressure forces Alexander to take the fight seriously. He begins to understand that Rudius's side is not a collection of weak followers. Even when surrounded, Alexander keeps finding angles to attack and escape. He is dangerous because he can turn a single opening into disaster. This sequence shows why one-on-one strength is not the only answer. Against monsters like Alexander, coordination becomes the only way to survive. Event 10. Rudius returns to face Alexander. Alexander sees Rudius as the opponent who can make his name shine. Rudius sees Alexander as a threat who must be stopped before more people are hurt. The fight becomes magic against speed, planning against talent. Rudius tries to control distance, while Alexander keeps breaking through the space between them. Rudius is pushed to use everything he has: his prosthetic arm, heavy magic, battlefield awareness, and the trust he has built with his allies. The duel is not clean or heroic. It is desperate, messy, and dangerous. Exactly the kind of fight that proves how costly victory can be. Event 11. The battle turns. Galfarian is no longer the unstoppable symbol he once was. Eris and the others have shown that even legendary titles can fall before resolve and teamwork. Alexander is forced back, unable to achieve the glorious victory he imagined. His dream of becoming the perfect hero begins to crack. The ogre god Maltus sees the result of the battle and begins to understand that continuing to fight may not serve his people or his honor. By the end of the main fighting, the village still stands, but everyone knows they survived because every ally carried part of the burden. Event 12. Survivors rest and count the cost. Rudius is physically exhausted and emotionally shaken. He survived, but the battle reminded him again that even careful planning can collapse in seconds. Roxy, Sylphie, Eris, Ruijerd, and the others help treat injuries and comfort the people around them. The aftermath is not glorious. It is painful and human. The supered people begin to understand that they were not abandoned. Many outsiders risked their lives so their village could continue to exist. This rest period matters because it reminds the audience what the battle was really about. The goal was never victory for pride. It was giving people another sunrise. Event 13. Peace with Ogre God Malta. Malta is powerful and intimidating, but he is not simply evil. He has his own reasons, his own people, and his own view of honor. Rudius speaks to him carefully, trying to create a settlement where both sides can step back from destruction. The conversation shows Rudius's growth. He is not only a magician or fighter now. He is also someone who negotiates after the fighting ends. Peace with Malta turns a battlefield enemy into a possible future contact. It is a small but important victory for Orsted's larger plan. Event 14. The fighting god armor moves. Geese is still working behind the scenes for Hitagami. Even when one battle ends, he is already preparing the next disaster. The fighting god armor is not just equipment. It feels like a living symbol of the next threat, something that can turn a single fighter into a catastrophe. Vadagatti's connection to the armor changes the mood of the story. The enemies Rudius just survived may only be the opening act. This interlude makes the victory feel unstable. The supered village survived today, but a much darker battle is already assembling beyond the horizon. Event 15. The communication cutoff becomes a strategic disaster. The failure of transfer magic circles and communication tablets is more than an inconvenience. It isolates Rudius's side at exactly the moment when speed and coordination matter most. This added event shows how frightening the enemy strategy is. Hitagami's side does not need to overpower everyone immediately. It can win by cutting options and forcing mistakes. Rudius understands that his greatest advantages are preparation, movement, and information. When those are damaged, even strong allies can be cornered. The cutoff also increases emotional tension because the Grey-Red side cannot easily call home, bring reinforcements, or retreat if the battle turns against them. This event makes the opening of Volume 25 feel like a trap snapping shut around the supered village. Event 16. the supered people face extinction again. The supered village is not simply a battlefield. It represents a people who have already suffered centuries of hatred and misunderstanding, and now they are threatened again. This section emphasizes why Rudius cares so strongly. Saving the village means protecting Ruijerd's people and preserving a chance for the supered to finally live openly. The villagers' fear adds emotional weight to the military conflict. They are not soldiers looking for glory. They are families caught in the path of a war shaped by outsiders. Rudius's defense becomes more than strategy. It becomes a moral stand against a history that has repeatedly turned the supered into victims. For narration, this event helps the audience understand why losing this battle would feel catastrophic far beyond personal defeat. Event 17. Eris's duel carries years of training. Eris's clash with Galfarian is one of the most meaningful fights in the volume, because it represents the result of years of brutal training and emotional growth. Gal is not just a strong opponent. He represents the world of the sword that Eris threw herself into after leaving Rudius behind. When Eris fights him, she is not only proving power, she is proving that her painful path led somewhere real. The duel also shows how far she has come from the impulsive girl of earlier arcs. She is still fierce, but now that fierceness is backed by purpose and experience. This event deserves extra focus because it is both a battlefield moment and a personal statement of who Eris has become. Event 18. The North God conflict reveals pride and inheritance. The battles involving Kalman Roman III and Kalman Roman II are not just action scenes. They involve legacy, title, pride, and the strange weight of the North God line. This section adds context to why those confrontations feel different from ordinary fights. The characters are battling not only for victory, but also over what their names and titles mean. The North God style has always carried chaos, boldness, and personal legend. That atmosphere shapes the energy of these fights. Rudius and his allies must survive opponents who do not act like simple soldiers. They are legendary individuals with their own pride and motivations. For a video, this event helps explain the thematic layer behind the spectacle of the North God battles. Event 19. Rudius's ravine survival shows his real strength. Rudius being trapped in the ravine is important because it strips away easy confidence. He is hurt, isolated, and forced to turn a disaster into a possible counterattack. This section shows that his real strength is not only magical power, it is the ability to think under pressure, improvise, and refuse to collapse when the battle goes wrong. The ravine becomes both a prison and an opportunity. Rudius studies the situation and looks for a way to transform his disadvantage into surprise. That kind of problem solving is one of the reasons he has survived so many impossible situations. He does not win only by overpowering enemies. This event makes his return to the battlefield feel earned, because the audience sees the mental work that lets him survive. Event 20. Dead End's return carries emotional history. When Dead End joins the fight, it carries emotional weight from the earliest parts of Rudius's journey. The name once belonged to a feared adventuring party built from survival and trust. Ruijerd's involvement reminds us how far the story has come since the Demon Continent. The bond between him, Rudius, and the supered has become one of the series' deepest threads. This section gives the battle a sense of history. Old promises and old friendships are now paying off in the final war. Dead End's return is not nostalgia for its own sake. It is the proof that the relationships Rudius built long ago still matter in the most dangerous moments. For narration, this event connects Volume 25 to the entire journey that began after the teleport disaster. Event 21. Mercy after battle prevents endless hatred. Rudius making peace with the ogre god Malta matters, because it shows he is not trying to solve every conflict by killing. He is looking for ways to end cycles of retaliation. After a battle this violent, mercy is difficult, but choosing dialogue, when possible, protects the future from becoming only revenge piled on revenge. This event also shows Rudius's maturity as someone working under Orsted. He understands that allies, neutrality, and reduced hatred can be just as valuable as defeated enemies. The ogre god's survival and negotiation add complexity to the aftermath. Not every opponent has to remain an eternal enemy. For the video, this event gives the audience a needed emotional pause after the intensity of battle. Event 22. The Fighting God Armor becomes the final shadow. The movement of the Fighting God armor at the end of the volume is terrifying, because it signals that the previous battle was not the final test. Something even worse is coming. Badageddon and the armor represent a threat on a completely different scale. The enemy side still has a trump card capable of overwhelming ordinary plans. This final expanded event explains why Volume 25 cannot end with simple relief. Surviving the village battle was only one stage of the final conflict. The armor's presence also ties the story back to ancient legends and the largest powers of the world. The final battle will not be a normal war. By the end of this event, the audience should feel both relief and dread. Rudius's side survived, but the final shadow has started moving. Conclusion: Eris proves herself against a legendary swordsman, Ruijerd protects the supered future, and Rudius survives disaster through strategy, stubbornness, and help from his allies. Alexander's desire to become a hero becomes one of the volume's most important emotional threads. His strength is real, but his understanding of heroism is still incomplete. The victory brings rest and temporary peace, but the Fighting God Armor interlude warns that Hidegama's greatest move has not arrived yet. So Volume 25 closes as a hard-earned win before the final storm. Rudius has protected the village, but the true decisive battle is still waiting in Volume 26.